So good afternoon and thank you for joining this webinar on Introduction to the Latest Features in Teams. I will be looking at breakout rooms as well as picking up a couple of things that have come out recently around people subverting sort of attendance in the in team calls. My name is James Garnett. I'm Director of IT at United Learning. I've got a couple of my colleagues on the call tonight who will be looking at the chat window and keeping an eye on that, answering questions, and if they think that it needs to be raised to me, they will then interrupt me and ask me specifically that question. I've got you all on mute all and forced to mute just to really enable me to present, and we don't get people joining part way through with their microphones on. It's just quite useful that way, and also gives you an idea of how it might be for students. When we get towards the end and we move into Q&A, I'll turn that off and then you'll have the ability to ask questions. The session is being recorded and it's probably advisable you keep your cameras off because we will be putting it on YouTube later on, and to enable you to look back at this because there's quite a lot in it, but also for other people who are involved in the EdTech demonstrator program. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit more about the EdTech demonstrator program if you're not familiar with it. It is something that is free for you to use once you've signed up. And United Learning is one of the organisations that are involved, although we are probably the only or the biggest group of schools that are involved in it, and it's something that you may be interested in. So I'm just going to unspotlight myself and move on with the presentation. So what I'm going to look at really this evening is frustrating feature updates, which have really wound me up in the last couple of months. Some meeting settings, that's really on the back of children misusing team meetings, and I'm aware of across a range of schools, not just United Learning, but nationally, where students are getting involved and disrupting lessons. So how you can manage that. Looks at the in-meeting tools that you may not be aware of, and then sort of the bulk of this will be on breakout rooms and then looking at future features. So some frustrating updates. Moderation madness, I call it, and the ability to manage meetings and Teams messaging. It was really simple until sort of September when Microsoft moved a few of the goalposts. So what used to be, and this is the general channel here, what used to be in the general channel is if you only had owners can post messages, then only you could post messages. And if you then made it anyone can post messages, then students could post into the general channel. It was nice and simple, and you can manage that really easily. The problem that we now have is that that isn't the case anymore, and only owners can post messages means that only owners can start a conversation. But what you'll notice here is an assignment that I put in, and this is my test tenancy, and a student can reply to it, although the settings were set as are shown here, only owners can post messages. And the reason for that is that they can reply to a message that's there. And of course, when you put an assignment, upload an assignment or set an assignment, it puts it into the general channel normally. And when you create meetings, if you're not careful, it puts it into the general channel as well. So that's been a bit of a frustration. If you look at a sub channel, so I've got another channel called video conferencing channel, and you'll see here that we get different settings. You'll see that it's no longer the same. I get channel moderation and I get allow members to reply to channel messages as turned off. And in turning it off, they can't reply. If you tick the box, they can reply. They can't start a conversation, but they can reply. So you can post a question, they can reply to it, but they can't start any themselves. But you don't want to get carried away and untick everything, because you certainly need to allow bots to submit channel messages, because Teams uses a bot, in effect, to put in announcements about meetings, and it uses a bot to put in announcements about assignments if you assign them to a channel. The difficulty is if you've got lots of messages sitting in the general channel already, you have to go through and delete all of those if you want to stop children replying to them using the existing tools or the tools that are just shown. There is one further way around this. It's a little bit draconian and applies across the whole team rather than within a particular channel. And that is to, if you click on the three dots next to your team name, it will bring up manage team and then you will get this feature here. And you can, as an owner, and as teachers, you'll be owners of your class team. You can then either mute all students, and that will mute them across the whole team. Or if you have one child who's particularly difficult or always disrupting, you can just mute them. But of course, it would still allow all the rest of the students to message in the teams. So it's finding the right one that works for you. If you haven't used Teams much, you've got not much in your general channel, then create a separate channel and post your assignments and your meetings into that. And that will work fine because you've got the moderation controls. If you've got a lot in the general channel, then really you're going to need to start to use this way of muting students if you want to manage their conversations. What I would say on top of that is that I can foresee Microsoft amending the way the general channel works. I just don't think it's got through the works yet, would be my view. So meeting options, and these are really key to you managing lessons successfully. When we look at the meeting options, the first thing you've got to do is create it. And this is about how you can control what people can do when they join your lesson. If you don't run a lobby, of course, people can join your lesson anytime. And that's a challenge. Because when I mean anytime, I mean at 2 o'clock in the morning, they can come in and misuse this tool. So you want to think about making sure you use the lobby. So you need to create the meeting first. Once you created the meeting, that creates an invite or a calendar icon in your Teams calendar. It also creates one in Outlook. You can go and it also, so when you click on it in Teams, you will just click edit. If you've got Outlook, open it up and you will see the meeting options option here. So this is done in Teams, but in Outlook, at the bottom of the invite in your calendar, you will see meeting options as well. And when you click on meeting options, it opens up a web browser and it allows you to set who can bypass the lobby, who can present, and allow attendees to unmute. So here we've got only me. Now we do have some other options. Now only me means just you. You can't assign it to anyone else yet. If you leave it to people in my organisation and guests, that means all of your students can join the lesson and bypass the lobby when you're not there. So that includes all of your students. You probably don't want to do that. And we certainly enforce only me across all of our, or encourage and instruct our schools to enforce it across all of their classes. You can assign it differently to admin staff as you do to teachers. So you may well say, well, all teachers must have it, but the admin staff who create meetings, we want them to have a slightly different view, and you can do people and organisations for a different group. But of course, when you create the meeting, you can change it. So this is what it would look like for us when we create meetings and what was in our schools. So it's only me on the bypass the lobby and only me on present. That does pose some issues if you have 2 teachers running a class, because if one teacher's not there and they're the organiser, the other teacher can't start the lesson because they can't get past the lobby and would have to start or create another meeting and ask the students to join that, or create a meet now and make sure the meeting settings were correct on that. So who can present is only me. Even if you do specific people, so you might put another teacher in to present with you, they still can't bypass the lobby because the bypass lobby bit is set to only you. And then you allow attendees to unmute. Depends on how you want the lesson to start. Do you want them to come in silence and get on with the task, or do you want to have a conversation with them when they join? Personal choice. And then when you've done that, you just click save. So let's have a look at managing the lobby. There's our people icon, and this is looking in the web browser, and I'll talk about how it looks different on the app. And here you will see, look for the green present status. So 4 student and 3 student. I'm very good at naming my students. You'll see they've got a red present status against them, which means they're in a meeting. They're actually in this lesson. So they're there. I've got 3 people. There's 3 students, and if I hover over it, I can see that 3 student is actually in my school. We have a tenancy called unitedchurchschools.com, I think, so that is the name of this school. And so that 3 student is in my school. I know their name. They've logged in because I can see a present status, and I'm happy about that. If you look at these 3, they not got a present status against them. Therefore, they are not a red or a green or a yellow one. Therefore, my system doesn't know whether they're there. Therefore, they're probably not in my tenancy. And actually, test guest has logged in anonymously through a web browser. Monster has logged in anonymously through an Android phone. And let's just put guest on the end, which has caught us out recently. And James Garnett has logged into an Office 365 account, but again, isn't in the same tenancy, therefore doesn't come up as being present. And therefore, I would remove them. For student, red dot, I know the name. Again, you've got to remember, it doesn't necessarily mean they're in your class, it just means they're in your school. So, you know, should they be in your class? And if they should, then you can admit them. And just looking down here at suggestions, these are people who should be in your class. So if you've created a meeting based on a channel in your team, it will also show you those students who should be in your meeting. So one student is online, but not in your lesson, and two student is online, but away at the moment. So you know that they're at least online, but haven't turned up to your lesson. Now, on the web browser, you get this popping up. It says 2 student is waiting in the lobby. Now, although the icon looks the same, I still wouldn't click on that as a pop-up. I would go to my participant icon and I would admit them that way so I can see whether they have got that present status. So this is a team experience. And before I team app experience, before I look at what it looks like, I'm just going to show you the meeting options. So when I start up a lesson, and I did this earlier, I came into Teams and I went and had a look on the 3 dots at my meeting options. So by clicking on the 3 dots there, I can bring up my meeting options. And I'm just going to check, have I set it properly? Only me can bypass the lobby. Who can present? People in my organisation. Now, for me, it's fine because we're all adults in this in United Learning's tenancy. But if it was children, I'm a teacher in a school, and that would mean the children could present, and therefore they can take over my lesson. They can remove people from my lesson. They can mute people. They can force mute. Can't force mute me, but they can force mute everyone. They can spotlight whoever they want to. So that is a concern, and I'd want to change that to be only me because I don't want the children taking over my lesson. So if we look at using it in the app, you get a slightly richer experience. The icons are slightly nicer. It tells me who's waiting in the lobby. You'll notice that it looks different again. You'll see I've got nice little boxes. The graphics are a bit nicer. And so it looks a little bit different. And if I compare it against the two, you'll notice that these attendees and I've admitted them into my lesson, but you'll notice that on the right, which is the web version, it doesn't give me any anything about outside the organisation, doesn't tell me anything about any presence. If you look here, there is a little presence, but it says it's got a cross through it, so it doesn't know anything about you, but it knows that you've logged in because you're outside the organisation. Here we've got Mr. Nice, who's coming in as a guest. Again, it's got a white circle because it can't do presence because it doesn't know they're there. But if you look across between the two, you'll notice that I lose that present status. So let me just click here. And here we've got someone coming in on a mobile phone, on an Android. And you'll see here, they've got a white circle, not a red, or a yellow or a green. They've got a white circle, but they haven't got guest on the end because they're coming through an Android phone. I've raised this with Microsoft. They weren't aware of it and they are looking to fix it. But with all these things, it won't necessarily be a quick fix. So when you're looking to admit people and you're looking for a red, a green or a yellow dot. So if someone does get in and you want to remove them, it's very straightforward. You click on the person, you get more options, you click on that and you can then remove from the meeting and that will eject them. They can come straight back in, which again is why you want to keep the lobby going. So by having the lobby still functioning, you are able to manage that and they will hit the lobby and get stuck there. They can't bypass the lobby. So a couple of things you may not have seen, but fit to frame. So when you right click on someone on your screen, you get this option to fit to frame. So here I've sort of minimized the screen. It's showing a very small portion of it. When I click fit to frame, it then fits it nicely in and I can see the whole person rather than part of them. And if I want to then make it go back, click fill frame and it would then return to the image on the left. Only presenters can spotlight, which is quite useful. So one of the reasons for making yourself the presenter means that only you can spotlight. So if you right click on someone, you get the option to spotlight. And when you click on spotlight, get your warning message, and then it makes them full screen. So you may want to do that for yourself, as I did at the start of the meeting. If you want to talk to the class and you want them just to see you, it's quite a useful way of doing that. And looking at how my daughter works, I'm sure that some of her teachers are doing that as well. If people have got their cameras off, generally only shows the active person anyway. And if you look at the attendance bar, participants bar, sorry, you'll see there's that little icon against that user to show that they've got the spotlight on them. And if I want to remove it, again, right click on their window, click stop spotlighting, and it will stop spotlighting and return it to how it was. People say, well, I can't see mute, or I can't see spotlight, or I can't see fit to frame. The important thing here is you can't mute someone if the microphone is muted. So you can't force mute someone if it's already muted. That's why it doesn't show there. And you can't fit to frame if someone hasn't got the camera on. And you get a bit of a different mute all experience. So when you look at mute all on the web, you get mute all, it appears there. When you look at it on the Teams app, it's not there. And I've had lots of people saying, we can't see mute all, we can't see mute all. And I'll be going, yes, it is there. And I suspect the reason why it's not there is that in order to see mute all in the app, you need to click on the 3 dots, and then it brings up the mute all option there. And again, that's different from don't allow attendees to unmute. It is just muting everybody at the start of the lesson. And again, it only mutes it mutes everyone but you. So if you're the one doing the mute all, it will mute everyone but yourself. So we've got participant options. So you can, or within the participant list, you've got options. You can download the attendee list. Currently, you need to do it in lesson. As soon as you shut the lesson down, you lose that attendance list. So if you want, you need to do it before you close the lesson down. I know that's something that I don't always remember when I'm doing sessions. You've got manage permissions, which to me is a bit odd because you've already got that off the 3 dots at the top. Manage permissions opens up the web browser, which for me isn't as good as doing it through the 3 dots at the top of the screen, which is what we saw here with meeting options. So that's a much better way of doing it. And that's next to your breakout tool. Then don't allow attendees to unmute, which is what I've done to you today, which is a good way of managing your audience if you've got a large number of people. So warning message when you click it, don't allow attendees to unmute, just tells you what it's going to do. Doesn't affect presenters, only affects attendees. And note that a presenter, not just the organiser, can unmute. So when the hand is raised, so you have the ability for other people to help deal with raised hands. So here you'll see that on the left-hand side, so on the right-hand side was before I force muted, and on the left-hand side, sorry, is where I force mute, and you'll see the difference in the microphone icon. You've gone from a microphone with a line through it, which means people can unmute themselves, to a microphone with a no entry sign, but the presenter isn't affected. So it only affects attendees. And as an attendee, you would just see, as you can see at the moment, that your microphone is now, you can't unmute yourself, and it's got the no entry sign on it. So if you want to allow someone to talk, they need to raise their hand. If you're looking at your screen, very briefly, you'll see them sort of get a golden glow around themselves, and you see their hands appear. The most recent appears at the top, which is frustrating. I would like the first to appear at the top, and when I've taken the hand down, the next one would then go to the top. It's frustrating, it's not that way around. And I will see if I can put a feature request in. But raised hands appear with the most recent at the top. You click on the person you want to unmute, and you'll see there that you get the allow to unmute. If you click to allow unmute, then you'll see their icon has changed from being a no entry sign to enable them to unmute. And the important bit is that it allows them to unmute. It doesn't allow you to unmute them. And that's for privacy reasons, in the same way you can't turn people's cameras on. So it allows the attendee to unmute themselves and talk. And when they've finished, you can either right click on them again and don't allow them to unmute, and you can also lower their hand. So you can control your audience and manage them that way. I suspect that's too much to manage, but it's there if you want to use it. And finally, on this section, when you're ending a meeting, please can you make sure that you click on the down arrow and you end the meeting, because that removes everyone from the class. So if you get 2 or 3 people who've hijacked your lesson and they're behaving very badly, and it's going to take you too long to go in and remove them, just go leave, end meeting, and it will force everyone out. There's no reason why you can't then look at your option settings and then start the lesson again. But this way you can very quickly cut the lesson and make sure that anyone who's been misbehaving is removed quickly, and you can then start again. Enables you to use your disciplinary processes. There are ways to find out who was in your lesson, how they got there. You can find out things like IP addresses, and that's things that technical teams are able to look into. But you don't get it in Teams in the browser, which is why as a teacher, I would say never use the browser, because you can't force the lesson to end. It's only available in the app in Windows and iOS. So breakout rooms. I'm going to do a live demo. We've got 122 on, so I think that's I've done it with 150 before, so I'm quite happy with that. But I'm going to just quickly run through various bits and pieces, then I'll do the demo for you. You need up-to-date clients. You need to make sure that you've got your end users have got the right version of the Windows client, or are coming in through a web browser, or the right iOS or Apple client. If you don't, you can't put them into breakout rooms, and they end up getting left with you in the main part of the room. Works with browsers, but not for the organizer. So if you're organizing it, again, you want to be using the app in Windows or the Mac. Avoid manual allocation. Oh, I tried to do it with 140 people and gave up very, very quickly because it's just too time consuming. You can't do it. You can't do it prior to the event. And people say, well, Zoom will do it, and Zoom does do it. But if it can't recognize you because you haven't logged in properly and aren't using the desktop client, Zoom struggles to allocate as well. So it is coming, but currently manual allocation I would avoid unless you've got 6 or 7 people, or maybe 10 at most, because you've got to allocate them as the organizer. And what are your children doing while you're doing that? Because you have to do it in the lesson. You can't do it before the lesson starts. Only the organizer can currently open and allocate breakout rooms. Will change, but not yet. Breakout rooms for large numbers put a strain on the organizer's device. So it is possible to completely break your device. And when I put you into breakout rooms, we'll see my device sort of hang itself for a minute or two while it deals with creating all the rooms and moving you in. And then it gets back together and goes fine. And then it does the same thing when you close them again. All content is saved. So all the stuff that people do in the chat, if you have files in there you want to fill in, or you've got notes in there you want them to make, it's all saved. As the organizer, you can see it all, and each person in the room can see that content. And when you close the rooms, they can't go back into the room and do more chatting, but they can see all the content that was left in there, which is very good. So think about your breakout room experience, whether it's been on Zoom or Teams or wherever else you've done it, and what was good and bad about it. And try and take that into any work you do with breakout rooms. Update your risk assessments using Teams. Hopefully you've got one, but you need to think about, well, what impact is this going to have on our use of Teams? How will people behave in a breakout room? Because when you put them into breakout rooms, they become presenters. So they've got all the presenter rights, so they can mute everyone. The first one there could make everyone an attendee and control it. So you need to be thinking about those sorts of things when you are using Teams. Reassess your online behavior policies and acceptable use guides. What are you going to have to change when you roll out breakout rooms and get children using them? Create guidance and best practice for staff. You know, what works well, how do you use it, and then refine it as things happen. And I can sit here and talk about what will work, but really, for you in schools, it's knowing what your students are like, staff, how they will cope with it, and something that you want to take nice and slowly. Think about breakout room size, and talk to one of our teachers on Twitter. He was saying he avoided 2 people. Some safeguarding issues about 2 people on their own, and certainly 3 people for him work well. And you may want slightly larger groups. Think about the combinations of people. Who should you not be putting with whom, particularly when you are doing them automatically. You need to look at those lists when you've done them and move them around a little bit possibly, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Ensure that tasks are clearly defined and set clear expectations on outcomes. When you put them into breakout rooms, they can't see the room that you've just been in. Well, actually, they can, because they can see the chat. So if you put content in the chat, they should be able to see it. But really, it's how are you going to set your expectations about what they are going to do when they're in the breakout room? Because if you've got a PowerPoint slide, so this is what we want you to do, now I'm going to put you all in breakout rooms, they can't see that PowerPoint slide anymore. But what you can do is you can send messages or announcements that are permanent. In Zoom, they tend to last 20 seconds and then sort of evaporate. At least within breakout rooms, they're permanent, so you can post comments in, or you can maybe use OneNote and start to drop content in that way. Decide how students will document what they're doing in the room. Are they going to use a shared document? Are they going to use the messaging feature? And you will see all the messages that they write as the organizer, so you can see all that content coming through. I'll with staff first. You know, you do really want to try it with your staff, understand what's good, what's bad, where does it break. Try it out with sixth form or a tame class. We all have a class that we get on well with, that you would try it with, who are going to push the boundaries a little bit, but they're not going to make your life absolute hell around that. I need to learn how to use Zoom, because we use Zoom for some professional development purposes with staff, so I use that with my scouts, and they have maybe I call them my tame class, and they will make it very clear, or they're very good at making my life a little bit more difficult, but they're fun with it, and I've learned a lot about how to use Zoom that way, and I may well use Teams with them at some point just to see what they can get away with. Think about safeguarding, but don't be afraid to use it if it will support learning or mental health. And there's a bit about, here I've said, maybe you could use it with form groups. If you're trying to get, they're struggling to communicate, and maybe it will work well with form groups. Whether it's by tables, maybe 4 or 5, you can put into a breakout room at the start of a form period and get them talking about things, and you can then drop in and out. And if you've got a limited number of rooms, then it's easier for you to bob in and out of all those rooms and just check they're going all right. So creating breakout rooms is really quite straightforward. You're looking for the box within a box icon at the top of your screen, and that will open up this create breakout rooms. You've got assign automatically, and I've said I would always do it automatically unless you've got a small number of people and you've got time to do it, maybe while they're doing a task. You can then start assigning them to rooms, but you need time to be able to allocate people if you're not going to do it automatically. And one thing to remember is you will only allocate those people who are currently in your class. If someone joins late, it won't allocate them, and you'll have to do that manually yourself. So I'm going to create 2 rooms because I've got 5 people, and it's going to put 2 to 3 into each room. And I'm now going to go and create my room. And if you do it manually, I've got it to allocate 2 rooms here. I suspect it actually only allocates 1, but I'm sure it does 2. You can add more rooms if you want to, and you can add 4, 5, 6. You can do up to 50 rooms, I believe. But I think manually you wouldn't be doing 50 rooms. And then you can select the people that you want to select. So when you've done your rooms, you'll say assign. Just above that, you'll see assign participants. You can then assign them, and you pick the room you want to assign them to. And once you pick the room, it automatically moves them into that room. The rooms are closed, so they won't know where they are, but you can and move them around afterwards. So I'm moving 2 into one of the rooms, and then I'll move the 3rd one into a different room. So when you look at breakout rooms, at the top, you've got the 3 dots, which of course means you've got some options, and you can recreate the room. So if you are using a recurring meeting, and you had some rooms from last time, you may want to recreate them, and I'll talk about why in a second. So you can recreate the rooms and use them, use the automatic method, or if you've got a long lesson and you've had them in breakout rooms and you want to change who they're in breakout rooms for the next session, you can then click on you can then recreate rooms, and it will reallocate people to rooms. It will also rename them if you have named them. And then you've got room settings. Now, room settings are quite important. Automatically move participants to rooms you want them to go. You don't want them to stay behind. And participants can return to the main meeting, and I'll show you why you don't want to turn that off. Dan, were you going to ask a question?
Yes, I was. Quite a good question, actually, about breakout rooms and recording. So if you're recording the lesson, what elements of the breakout rooms are recorded, if anything?
Nothing. So it doesn't record the breakout rooms. Now, I understand they're looking. So what we're starting to see come out from Microsoft is automatic. So from what I've seen in some of the sort of announcements, automatic recording of lessons is going to come. So you can, in that sort of meeting options, you can record your sessions. Whether that means that you can record the breakout rooms or not, I don't know yet. But you can record them, but it's people in the room have to record them, not you. So you might have to go into every single room and start recording, which is a bit laborious. So recording the breakout rooms, if you record the main part of the lesson, it won't record what goes on in the breakout rooms because you're not in the room. When you create a breakout room, it's actually creating brand new rooms, brand new team rooms.
Okay, thanks for that, James.
So participants can return to the main meeting. I wouldn't allow it. If you're running a lobby, it will cause you all sorts of problems. So I would leave it there. You move students into the room, and when you want to come back, you pull them back. Much easier. So you can rename rooms, and there I've got room 1 and room 2. They've got some people allocated. So again, I'm going to click on the 3 dots, which means I've got some more options, and I'm going to rename the room, and I'm going to call it South, and then I just click on rename room, and here we've got my rooms that have been renamed. Very straightforward, and you can rename it again and again, and it doesn't matter. You can rename it even halfway through a session if you wanted to. And you can reassign people, but only when the rooms are closed. Zoom, you can do them when they're open. Teams, you can't yet, although it is on the roadmap. But you can only reassign when the rooms are closed, which is a bit of a frustration if you put someone in the wrong room, as I did the first time I used breakout rooms. And the only way to move her was to close the room. Not all of them, just close that room, reassign her, and then open it up again. And end up leaving her where she was because it would have caused too much grief. So select the room. Dan, you got a question?
Yes, and another good question here about breakout rooms. Some people are finding the chat permissions are disabled in the breakout room alone, but not the main meeting. Have you ever come across that? And is that some sort of policy setting?
I don't know, and I will go and investigate. So there's a limit to how much I can look into. So I try and do a lot. So the chat features I've seen have been there. Now, whether the chat features are disabled because they are set in the because they've been set in the team, I'm not sure. But I'll certainly go and investigate that, and I'll post something afterwards on that because I'm not sure, Dan. We may no, I will struggle to do it on this, but I'll have a look later. But I haven't seen that. No.
Thank you.
Here I'm going to select James A1 user. Assign then gets highlighted. I'm going to click on assign, and I can then pick the room I want to assign them to. And it may well be that you've automatically assigned everybody, but there are a couple of presenters who you don't want to be in a breakout room, so you're going to pull those back out. So you click on unassigned, so they don't go into a breakout room, or you could click on South, and it will automatically move them to South. So you've allocated your rooms, and you're ready to start, and you just click Start Rooms. When you start the room, your device goes a little bit slow, a couple of things don't work, and you think, oh my God, my device is frozen. And it's only because your device is working quite hard to create the rooms. And you'll see it says opening rooms. And then once it's opened, you get nice green, and you'll see that they're in a meeting. You'll notice that I can't select individuals, and I can't assign. So that's the thing about you can only assign when the room is closed. And as the organizer, if I move my mouse over north, I get some options, or I can join the room. If I want to drop in and see it, I can rename it if I want to, or I can close an individual room. In the same way that you can open an individual room, you can close an individual room. So you may decide, actually, I want to close this room early and bring them back. So you can close it, have a conversation with them, and then you could send them back if you wanted to, because you can close and open individual rooms. Making announcements, you now want to tell people some things, and I find making an announcement really useful. So 3 dots by breakout rooms. and you click make an announcement. And in making an announcement, you're going to broadcast a message. It's an important, it'll come in with a red exclamation mark as an important announcement, and that will appear in every breakout room. You have 10 minutes to complete your task, and it's quite good that way, or you can say you've got 5 minutes left, or you can say, this is what I want you to do now. So you might set them a task for 5 minutes, and then you're getting ready to put the next task in and the next task. And you can, I often have those on a Word document, so I'm just copying and pasting it in and click send. So I've got all of their tasks, or it's on your PowerPoint and you're just copying it under the PowerPoint. You click send and the message persists. And this is what it would look like in the breakout room. You get a little red dot, message dot that you're familiar with, and you get that important with an exclamation mark, and you've got that guest then replying back. And that will persist, and you can see all that information appearing there. And as the organizer, you can also, when you go into Teams and the main Teams, not when you're in the meeting, when you go to Teams and you look at chat, you can see the chat that's happening in all your rooms. And you can just sit there and watch all the chat coming, and you can see the conversations that are being messages that are being written. So you've got an idea of what's going on anyway. And you can then choose to go and drop into a room, and within the team meeting, but you could click on this chat and you would then be able to drop into it from there. But I generally try and do it from within the meeting itself, as it's a bit of a cleaner experience. So if you want to join a room as an organizer, you would click on the 3 dots, click join, and once you're in there, you get the same experience as everyone else, but you're the only one who has the return option. Everyone else in the room will have leave, and leave basically means you're going to leave the meeting. If they click leave, they'll drop right out of both the main meeting and the breakout room, and when they come back in, they'll come back into the breakout room in the main meeting. They won't come back in to their breakout rooms. They'll come back into the main meeting. And if you click return, it takes you back to your main meeting. But you only see that, no one else does. When you close rooms, you click close rooms at the top of the screen, and you will see them closing, and your machine will grind to a halt slightly, and the users in the room will see this room will close in 10 seconds. You'll be automatically moved to the main meeting. They can force it by returning, but normally within about 10 seconds, it starts moving them back, and they're back in your lesson. So I looked at recurring lessons and breakout rooms, because part of me thought, oh, it'd be really good if I can keep the breakout rooms the same for every lesson. I can then put people into the same groups every lesson. And yes, breakout rooms will persist if you use recurring meetings. The content will remain in the rooms because it's just a chat. Old content, though, will only be accessible to those who were in the room previously. So if you allocate the same people into the same rooms each time, they will see all the old content. If you put someone new in the room, they will only see the new content from that point forward. Room allocations do not persist. And that's a real frustration for me. It'd been really nice if the room allocations had persisted, because then when the next lesson came along, you could put people into the same room again. And for me, that was a frustration, and I'd hoped it would persist. Now, whether that will change as Microsoft develop breakout rooms and do more work with it, my hope is that it will. Because content persists, if you want to make sure that you've got these rooms from the previous lesson, because you're running recurring lessons, because it's easy to manage the meeting options. If you want to start a new set of rooms, because you don't want the students to see what was done last lesson, you can, if you click on recreate rooms, it will then recreate the rooms for you, and it will force them into different breakout rooms next time, rather than putting them to the same ones that were there from the previous session. So what are the issues? If you allow people to return on their own, they get the return button, which is great. Forcing a lobby, they will return to the lobby. So if I click return, it puts me into the lobby in the main room, and therefore you have to be in there to let them back in to the main meeting. To send them back to the rooms, you'll need to find their room, click on their name, and then click ask to join, and they get pulled in and they will bypass the lobby. If you don't do that, when they rejoin your main meeting, they will get a little icon saying join, I can join the breakout room. And if they click on that, they go into the lobby of the breakout room, I found, because of course it's picking up the lobby functionality that you've set at the start. So if they try and get on their own, they will get stuck in the lobby. Once in a room, students have presenter rights. I haven't done enough playing with this, but certainly some of the work I've done recently has, you see that whoever goes into the room has presenter rights, partly because you want them to use things like the whiteboard or these Microsoft Viewers. They're in there to collaborate, therefore they want the whiteboard and all those other features. I'm going to do some more work looking at how students behave in there, but the problem is with presenter rights means the first one in there can make other people attendees. And some of the early work I did with breakout rooms was much more around how adults use it. And it's only as you start to unpick it, well, how are students going to use this, do you start to find some of these limitations around the fact they've all got presenter rights. But then if you've got a set of a good behaviour policy and you outlined what your expectations are, then it should be dealt with through that. So what's coming soon? Pre-configuring breakout rooms. Could do with that now. Multiple meeting organisers means you can have more than one person being an organiser, therefore more than one person can do the breakout rooms, which is really quite important. Share meeting content from breakout rooms into the main meeting. Less important from my mind because as an organiser you can see it, but it is something that people do want. And adding external customers partners. Interestingly, all of my meetings were bringing in externals, whether they were guests or people on others. So I think that one's there already. And a couple of other things before I take you into the breakout rooms. Raise hand. I didn't realise that Control Shift K would put your hand up, which is quite useful to know, rather than trying to find your fiddling around with your mouse can be quite useful. And you'll notice that we've got some of these emotions appearing, and I'll show you those now. So I'm just going to quickly drop out of this presentation. And I'm going to demo breakout room. So I'm just going to pull across my window and I will check my screen. And yes, I can see that. So here is my screen. Here you all are. And if I just click on here are the emotions. So I'm running a preview version and you can turn it on if you want, but only those who are running the preview version will see these emotions. So I click on clapping hands. You will see on my little icon there, I get clapping hands. Which is quite fun. I can give a thumbs up and I can do a heart and heaven help us when that comes out. I'm not sure you can turn it off at the moment. I might be feeling that I didn't really want that happening in my lessons with people getting carried away with all these emotions. I need to, because it's still in preview, all the functionality you get isn't necessarily going to be there. The breakout rooms. So I'm going to assign automatically to 10 breakout rooms and I'm going to create the room. So I give it a little while to create the room and it's now done the creation. And you'll see down here that I've got all the people assigned to rooms and they're all closed. If I want to, I can come here and so I can click on here and I can see all the people in the room. And maybe I decide I want to move Laura from room 1 and I can move Laura to room 6 and Laura's now been moved to room 6. So I can move people around. I can look at my settings and look at my room settings and automatically move participants, and participants can return to the main meeting is off, so that's fine. And I'm now just going to send you all off to some breakout rooms. Or let's just rename one and I will rename this room as North. I will rename. And you'll see it's renamed it quite happily. So I'm just going to start the rooms and I'm going to push you all into your breakout rooms. And I'll leave you in there for about 30 seconds. Run a few, I might send you an announcement and then write some messages if you want, and then I'll pull you back out again. And I'm now about to have kittens as I start the breakout rooms. So as you'll see, it's opening the rooms and as it opens the rooms, it will start to allocate you to those rooms. It's got quite a lot of work to do, so it'll take a little while. And I'm just seeing one of my test users gone, and I will, if I click on participants, show participants, it will show me them all moving across to the breakout rooms. So as we can see, oh, we're all finally, hopefully everyone will move. Hello, Uma, you've got stuck. So I'm just going to see if I can force you, Uma. So we've got a few people are getting stuck, which is one of the things I found with a large number. If you've got a join meeting, do click on the join meeting. So we've got one or two people who haven't managed to be assigned. Oh, I've got, and I see that Nikki and an unknown user I can't assign either, and it won't let me assign, and that's possibly browser based. So I'm just going to close, I'll just do an announcement and then I'll talk everyone through. And I'm just going to close the rooms. And as you close the rooms, everyone starts to return, and you can see them all returning here, and you can look at your numbers and as they all line up. So everyone should have returned. If I click on breakout rooms, it's still closing some of them. And then when they're all closed, it should show them all as closed. Wonderful. So they're all now closed. So I've closed all the rooms, and we had a couple of users that I definitely couldn't move, and they are grayed out, and that may well be, it's an old version of the browser, the app. It may be, and that's normally what it is. And if you have people who have a problem with that, then it may be that you need to push them through using the web interface. But that is breakout rooms. It is 114 is quite a lot to do, and occasionally you get people who don't move across. You can ask to join, and you can go in and try and pull them into the rooms as well. And I'm just going to stop sharing for a second while I try and pull up the chat. And
there's a few questions, James, that I think be worth just thinking about, and one is that sample kind of risk assessment policy for breakout rooms. It's not something we can do on behalf of schools really, but it's something schools need to do for themselves. I don't know if you've had any experience with risk assessment and breakout rooms yet.
I haven't written one yet, but certainly is something that I will be looking at to write some risk assessments. I have done some risk assessments or template risk assessments when we first started using Teams, and just getting people to think about what, this might happen, what are we going to do? This might happen, what are you going to do? So it's that sort of risk assessment. So how do we deal with students having presenter rights? And is that a risk, or are we happy with that? Make sure that more than 2 people are in a room at any one time. And when you're allocating rooms, you keep an eye on it. So when you move people into rooms, you look very quickly down and make sure that everyone has picked up the right, is in a room and they haven't got 2 people left on their own. So is that something you want to do? Teachers drop in and out of the rooms as they move through, is what I will be looking at. And I'll try and write that in the next 3 or 4 days to support schools on that. But I would take it slowly and certainly use it with staff first to try and unpick what some of the challenges are and get staff to look at what's it like in this breakout room, what might children do, and feed back into that process as well.
Yeah, a couple more, just quick ones. Is there a way for students to return straight back to the presentation? The process of returning from the rooms always seems to close the presentation on the screen.
So I'm trying to think what I saw when I closed the room. So it depends on what you're presenting. I would assume it would come back to the presentation. When you came back in, did you see my screen with everyone on it, Dan, or were you?
Yeah, we saw your team screen with all the pictures on it.
So you came back to the presentation, which was in fact what I was presenting at the time. I'll just put the PowerPoint back up. So that you should come back to that, I would hope. I'll have a look, but as far as I'm aware, you should come back to the presentation. It depends on if you're sharing your screen, they should come back to that shared screen. The fact that I'm running two screens makes my life a bit easier, and the fact that I've got my teams open on one screen and I've got the presentation on another screen, which makes my life a bit easier. So I have the luxury of that.
Yeah, a couple of other quick ones. I think this is a no, but can you maintain the presentation from the full meeting into the breakout room so your screen's still available? I think you said that was a no at the current time.
You can't at the moment, no. What you might look to do, so it's one of the reasons why you might want to keep meetings, keep the same meeting rooms running, because once you can't create the meeting rooms currently without having someone in it. So if I want to create a meeting room or create some breakout rooms, I've got to assign someone to it in order to create it, because I need to open it to create it. And I can't open a breakout room without someone in it. But once I have created, so I'm just going to see if I can bring this across. So here are some breakout rooms. So once you've created them, and I'm going to come into this one, there's no reason why you can't. I'm just going to pull it slightly wider. There's no reason. There's no reason why you can't add some files in or add some notes in. And particularly, so you can start to put stuff in there, but you need to have created them in the first place, which is one of the advantages of keeping them going in a recurring meeting. But it's how you then allocate people to them is the challenge, and it's just not quite there yet. But you can drop files in, so you can drop documents. So you could put a PowerPoint in there. You have got meeting notes, which will bring up a bit of OneNote, and you've got a whiteboard. And you may, I think we're trying to over-engineer it at the moment in what we wanted to do. And I think, use breakout rooms as somewhere they go and chat at the moment, get used to using it, how they're using it, and then think about, well, how else can I use it? Because it will develop and it will become more effective. But I think at the moment you're using it to go and put them in a room, have a discussion, make some notes, use the chat feature and upload and share it back. But as you see, as the teacher, I can see all of the messages going on in here. I can see people using it, and depending on the group you're using it with, and I talk about TAME, so someone's about using it with year 5, that's a really good idea. But you can look at this as the organizer and get some feedback from it. And if you look at within the class and within your chat, you would see it as well. So I can still comment in here. If I go to this top one and let's have a quick look. I'm acutely conscious I don't want to, some things on my chat probably shouldn't see. So I can still comment in here, and I could write a comment into this chat that will be there the next time people come in, because I've still got right access to it. But you can't put any of the content in there. I think we are trying to over-engineer it at the moment, and I would keep it simple and just see how it develops. And as you use it and become more comfortable with it, you'll think, well, I'm reusing the same rooms every time. I'm going to put some content into each room, and I'll manually allocate, particularly for sixth form. I think any lower down, you're going to struggle to manually allocate 30 people at a time.
Just to confirm a couple of points, the chat is persistent. It doesn't go away. You can access that any point after the meeting.
Yeah, Yeah. And it's write out, read and write for you, but read only for the participants you put in there.
Quick request to share any risk assessments. If we write a simple one, they'll go on our DSP site as and when we do those. A quick request for together mode. Can you briefly demonstrate and explain what that is?
Oh yes, I love together mode. Together mode is going to struggle without some cameras on. So can my team put their cameras on, or at least one or two of you put your camera on? It'd be lovely. Thank you, Dan. So we don't get large gallery preview because we haven't got 49 of you with your cameras on, but if 49 of you put your cameras on, it would fill up the screen with 49 of your faces if the processor will take it on my laptop. So together mode, I'm just going to click on together mode and I'll get Dan and I've got a little laptop here beside me that I will turn the camera on, so you'll get a side-on view of me and all people put their cameras on. So it's I'll put this beside me. Actually, I can't unplug it unfortunately because I've turned the Wi-Fi off. So you can see it's in together mode, which is quite fun. And on together mode, you've got different scenes and you can play around with your scenes. So you've got 50 on that one, 50 on that one. You can go down to 24, so sort of maybe a bit more executive, which is quite fun. And you can come here and you can, if there are 5 of you, you can be around a desk. We've got under the sea, so it'll pick out 10 people and it changes it for everyone. So it picks out 10 people to put under the sea. Now, as far as I'm aware, it's only the presenters who can play with this, because the last thing you want is your students playing around with this. You can, let's see if we've got another one. So they've taken some of the Christmassy ones out of here, but you can maybe put yourselves in the amphitheatre. So you've got a bit of fun to play with. But everyone knows where they are and everyone's in the same place. So you can start sort of, where am I? Let's go. So I can start pointing at maybe Dan and I can put my hand over. If it'll take my hand out, it's got a bit better, but you can maybe sort of do a pointer down, so you can have a bit of fun with it. It's all right. Now we've got a few of you up here, so if I go to large gallery preview, you'll also see that when you do large gallery preview, it just puts lots of people on the screen, and if normally you only get 9, but if you get large gallery preview, you'll get many more, and I've seen up to about 30 with their cameras on. People tend not to want the cameras on. So let me just take that off again and go back to gallery and pull that out of the way. Just a couple of other things, Dan, before we go. Coming soon, i.e. in the next month, is a change to how you share content. So be aware of that for your teachers. It's changing. So you're going to go up to the top and you're going to get that view here rather than the one you get at the moment where it drops at the bottom. And the PowerPoint will appear, and PowerPoint will get better. PowerPoint's been a bit clunky up until now, but they're going to start to give you some of those features that you want in terms of inking tools in PowerPoint through this element. That means that when you present, it goes in the main block as my presentation does on my screen when I bring it across, rather than it filling the whole screen. You can't see your class. So that'll be better for using PowerPoint. Coming soon also, custom layouts. This is February. Presenter will be able to customize how content shows up for meeting participants, including overlaying their video on content. I've not seen a preview of that, but that's supposedly on its way. Live reactions, you've seen those. So they're here in preview at the moment with all the emojis. It worries me a little bit. Meeting recap. So any of the stuff will be shared in the chat tab for the meeting. I don't think there's anything particularly new there. New lobby settings, only invited users join directly. And I'm hoping that is in the to field. So if you invite your class in a channel, but you put a couple of teachers in the to field of the invite, then the teachers can bypass the lobby, but the students can't. I haven't seen it. I haven't heard about it in preview yet, but I'm waiting to hear what that's going to look like. Dynamic view automatically optimizes shared content and video participants. I'm not sure what that is, but content and specific participants side by side again will be quite useful, so that you can put people and content in different ways. Again, that's March, so hopefully by then we'll be out of lockdown. I live in hope, but it's saying that it will be quite useful even moving forward. Chat bubbles. I'm not sure I want this, and hopefully I can turn it off. Chats during team meeting will surface on the screen of all the meeting participants, making the chat more central to conversation. That might be quite good, but sometimes I could do without it. Particularly if people joining, saying hello. A couple of things you want to pick up on application limitations. On the web, one active speaker. I've actually seen more than that. And although this was a screenshot taken last night, I've seen more than one active speaker on the screen, and some of my screenshots are taken from that. So I'm not quite sure what has changed there. But I know that some people say, well, I can only see the person speaking, and that's not the teacher because there's a bit of noise in the background from someone else. But large gallery view, you got up to 49, and you got spotlight as well in there. But notice that Android and iOS, there are some limits, and particularly around background blur and together mode. So you can't background blur, you can't use together mode if you're on the web. So students or children will get a different view if they're doing it through a web browser. And the background blur is quite important as well. And on the Android, you can't background blur. It's going to come, but it's not there yet. And particularly when you're thinking about students turning on cameras at home and those sorts of things, that may be something to think about. We've had quite a few questions, Dan. Are there any more? Because I've overrun by 4 minutes, which is most unlike me. But what I will show you there is the EdTech demonstrator program. If you haven't signed up for it, do. We'd love you to sign up with United Learning, but you don't have to. It's free to you. It's paid for by the DfE. It's managed by LGFL, and is something that is certainly well worth making use of. It is gives you access to people like Dan Bunker, Joe Gwillam, and Bruce Wilson of my team, plus all the teachers that we've sort of roped into supporting this program, who will help you through this. So it's something that is well worth getting yourself involved with, and there are lots of things that you can get advice on, whether it's just how do I get teams set up, all the way through to digital strategy, or just having someone to talk to and say, well, are we doing this right? Can you give me some advice on how to do X? We try to do Y. Can you tell me how I can do this? Can you quickly run us through forms? Rather than you spending 3 or 4 weeks trying to work out the nuances of how to use forms, you can then say, can you just do a quick training session on forms and get you up and running really quickly on that? So do use the program. It's certainly well worthwhile, and we'll be always more keen to help you. Any other questions, Dan?
Well, there's quite a few, James, but I think probably the best thing to do is if we go through them and create an FAQ sheet, which we'll share with the slides and the recording of the webinar. You'll find all those on our website that I shared with you in the chat earlier. I think that's probably the best way to do it, because some of them are quite involved and need a little bit of research on our part. But I think we've probably get 10 good questions out of the chat tonight that we can kind of document.